Hey, what's up everyone? Julian here, back with another episode of the Learning Flask series. This is episode 15 and we are going to be working with sessions, or the Flask Session object. So what is it? Well, the best way to describe it is a encoded cookie that gets sent back and forth on every request, and we can treat it almost like a dictionary. Well, we can treat it just like a Python dictionary. We can add values to it, we can pop values off of it, and it's stored on the user's browser and sent to the server on every request. And we treat it just like a dictionary. So, we can add information like, user IDs, we can add certain preferences, and just because the session object is encoded does not mean it's secure. We can quite easily decode the session object just by copying the string from the browser and then doing a couple of lines of Python on it to decode it. So the session object is powerful. We can use it pretty much throughout our site. It's globally available from any of our routes, from any of our Ginger templates. You can access a session. So it is really, really useful. So I think the best thing to do is jump straight into a demonstration here. So you can see I've got this sign-in page with the username and password, and we've got the developer tools open in Firefox down here. You can see we're in cookies and we've got no data available. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in here. And here we go. So I've got this profile page. It's got some information here. My email, it's not really my email, and then just something about me. And you'll also see down here in the cookies, we've got this session cookie here, the name of session. And if we take a look at the value, you can see we've got this kind of long encoded string here. So this is all the session information in here. It's like a dictionary which gets encoded into a long string and then dumped in the browser as a cookie. So I'm going to go ahead and go to sign out. And now when I've gone to sign out, you can see it's redirected me to the sign-in page, and this cookie is no longer available. In fact, if I just come down here and then come back, you can see that the session cookie is now gone. So as soon as I went to the sign out page, it wipes that session cookie. And I can also go ahead and log into a different account. You can see here we've got a different profile come up. We've got this profile for Clarissa with some different information here. And again, we've got another session cookie down here. And if I go to sign out and then just reload that, you can see the session cookie's gone. So let's jump in and work out how we do this, how we work with the session cookie. So what we will do, we've got a Flask app up and running. I'm going to go ahead and delete everything I've got here because I want to go through it from scratch with you guys so you can see what we're doing. So let's first start out with creating a couple of templates. So we've got this one here, which is profile, and I'm not going to type it out because it was just going to get too long, but go ahead and let me make this a little bit bigger. Go ahead and pause the video, and you can see we're just extending our base template, and then we've got a very simple bit of HTML here with we're using the Ginger syntax to just get some information about a user. So just go ahead and copy that and all will make sense shortly. So pause the video if you need to. We've also got another page called sign in or sign up, and it's just a very simple form. So we've got a form with the action of sign in, and you can see here we've just got two fields. We've got a username and a password and a button to submit the form. So go ahead and pause that if you need to, if you want to follow along. So let's jump into our views and actually start working with the session object. So we're first up going to import some things from Flask. So from Flask, import. So we're going to need render template. So go ahead and import that. We're going to be working with request, so go ahead and import that too. And you haven't seen this before, but we actually need to import the session object. And like I said, it's just like a dictionary, so we're essentially just importing a dictionary. We'll also import redirect, and we'll also import URL for. And if you haven't worked with any of these, then you will get to see them in action. So first thing we need to do to work with the session, we need to create a secret key. And the secret key is what's going to be used to encode the session object itself. So a good way to create a good secret key is over here in my terminal. In fact, I'll leave that up and running. I'll just start a new tab here. Oh. I'm going to fire up an instance of the Python interpreter, and I'm going to import secrets, and then secrets.token URL safe, and then we'll pass that 16, and then that's going to give us a nice random secret token. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. So to set up our secret key, we do like we've done with other app config variables. So app.config, square brackets, secret underscore key, and then we pass it our secret key like so. So that's going to let us encode. Well, it's not going to let us because we don't have to do it at all. Flask does it all behind the scenes. So Flask will see that the secret key variable has been set, and it will use this string here to encode the session. So let's first go ahead and create our sign-in route. So app route sign in, and because we're posting data to it with a form, we need to give it the methods argument, and that takes a list of methods, and ours will be get and post. Now we'll create a function sign in, and for now let's just return render template, and I've got this in public signin.html. So let's just jump into the browser and make sure that is showing up, and there we go, we've got our sign in page. So just to recap, this is what we got on the sign in. If you need to pause it, go ahead and do so. So we can post data to this route now. It's not going to do anything. So let's go ahead and grab that form information. So if the request.method is equal to post, then we want to go ahead and do something. So let's grab that form data. I'm going to save it into a variable called rec, and then we use request.form. So we know we've got a username, so we can do rec.get username, and password equals rec.get password. Now guys, this is purely to demonstrate the session. This is nowhere near the kind of security that you would need for a real user management system. So whatever we do here, do not copy it and put it into your own application. This is purely to demonstrate the session in use. And I mean that. Don't, you know, we're going to create a little mock database here just using a dictionary with plain text passwords. So whatever you do, do not use this kind of system in production. It's purely to demonstrate what we're doing here. So just make sure we've got everything. We can print username and password. Let's go ahead and resend, and there we go. We just get some random gobbledygook there. So I could Julian and password, go ahead, and there we go. So we're printing, so our form is posting successfully, and we've got our variables that we want. So we need to create a couple of users. So I'm just going to copy in what I've got here. I'm not going to bother typing it out because it will take too long. It's not much, but let's go ahead and paste that in. So What we've got here is just a dictionary called users, and then inside that we've got two other dictionaries. We've got one with the username Julian and one with the username Clarissa. And inside each of these we've got a few values. We've got a username, email, password, and a bio. So again, this is not how you would structure any kind of database. It's just purely to demonstrate how we work with session. So what do we want to do? So we want to look up the username in our database, and then we want to check if the password matches the password for the username. So let's go ahead and do so. So if not username in users, so if the username here is not in users, so it's going to look at these two values here, then what we're going to do is just print username not found, and we will return a redirect for the request.url. So okay, so if the username is in users, we can do actually something I forgot. We want to actually assign that user. So if the username is in our users database, we will do user equals users, and we will get them by the username. So if the username is in our users database, we're going to create a new variable called user, and we're going to pluck out the value for the username in that dictionary using the username key that they provided. So now we need to check if the password that was provided matches the password here for our user. So we will do so again. I'm going to use the if not password is equal to the user password. We will just go ahead and print password incorrect, and then we will return a redirect for the request URL. So if all of these checks pass, that means we've got ourselves a user and the password matches. So what I will do, I'm going to throw an else down here, and this is when we're going to start using the session. So like I said, the session object is just like a Python dictionary. We can add values to it, and we can pop values off it, we can delete values, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do, I want to store our user's username in the session, and why we do that will be made clear very shortly. So session, and then we can create a new key. So session username, I want that to be equal to, well, not equal to, I want to assign it with the user username. So that is the syntax for creating a variable or creating a key and a value in the session object. It's just like you would a Python dictionary. So session, and then the key that you want to create, and then just use the equals and then assign it whatever value you want. In this case, we've got our user's username. So again, this is our user. They've got a username key in their little dictionary part here, and the value for that is Clarissa or Julian, depending on what user logs in. So now what we'll do, we'll just print user added to session, and then what we're going to do is return a redirect, and then we're going to use URL for, and we're going to build an endpoint to profile. Now we haven't actually created the profile route yet, although if you have been following along with this series, we did create a route called profile, and I think that's further up here. I may have commented it out. Yeah, I've commented it out, so you can either comment yours out or just copy it, or, well, don't copy it, in fact cut it and paste it down here just so it's a bit closer, so it's easy to work with, or just go ahead and comment it out and create a new one as we're going to do here. So we've got our sign in, and in fact what we'll do just to see this working now is I'm just going to comment out the redirect for the profile, and we'll just return them back to the sign-in page so we can see the session in use. So let's go ahead, and we know the username Julian is in our database and the password was just example. So if I go ahead and hit return, you will see we've now got this session cookie down here. And if we go ahead and look at our network requests, you can see here we've got this post request. So let me make this a little bigger. And if we come down and look at the response headers here, you can see we get this set cookie. And you can see we get session equals, and then we get this long kind of encoded looking string with HTTP only and a path. And if you watched the video previously on cookies, you'll understand this a bit better. So there we go. We have got our secure session object here as a cookie. Well, I say secure, it's not really secure. And I think what I'll do is just go ahead and demonstrate this now. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy that. And I really want to enforce why it's important not to store anything valuable here. So we've got this encoded looking string. So what I'm going to do is over here in our Python interpreter, I'm going to import base64, and then I'm going to do the following: base64.b64 decode, and this takes a string. And I'm just going to copy this. We may have to tweak this string slightly to get this to work, but go ahead and paste that in. Okay, so we get some random looking padding there. It doesn't mean much to us. But if I go ahead and delete session equals, see what we get. Okay, we get incorrect padding. So if I go ahead and I'm deleting some random characters here. Okay, so we get a different error now. Cannot be one more than a multiple of 4. So what happens if I go ahead and delete that equals? No, still nothing. Right, okay. So you can see what we've got here. I'm going to go ahead and copy this string, and I'm going to paste that just underneath here so you guys can see what we've got. So I had to delete a few characters, but we got there eventually. And you can see here that what we have got is username and a value. So this is why you do not put any sensitive information in the session object, because that took me less than a minute to decode it with basically 2 lines of code in Python. So the rest here is just padding, but the real important stuff here is username Julian. So to illustrate this even further, I mean, I probably don't have to, but let's go ahead and do it anyway. You might do something like session password equals user password. So let's come back down here and come to storage, and I'll go ahead and delete all of those. Oh, we left that string there. Let me go ahead and copy that, comment that out. Right, let me delete all of those. Okay, so we've got no session cookie available. Julian example. So that we got our new session cookie. So let's come to network, go to post, scroll down, and again I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to copy that, and we'll just paste that down here. You can see this is a longer one. I'll just start again. So let's paste in our string. So again, The first time we just get some kind of random blobs. That doesn't mean much to us. I'm just going to go ahead and we'll delete that session equals again. Just try and work out what we need to delete. Incorrect padding again. Okay, I think we're getting closer. There we go. So I'll just go ahead and copy that here into VS Code. So you can see here we have decoded the session, and we've got a password and a username, and the rest is just padding. So again, the reason I've done this is just to illustrate why you do not put anything valuable or sensitive in the session. So even the username, unless it's something that's kind of publicly visible, I wouldn't recommend putting a username in here. What you want is maybe some kind of ID number, something that cannot identify a user. So typically what you would do is each user in a real scenario, in a real database, a user would have a unique ID, which is either created by yourself or by the database. What I do in my web applications is, I get that unique ID and then I assign that to the session. And then that's the only thing that I keep in sessions. The rest I put in another database like Redis. So hopefully that illustrates a bit more about why you want to keep session, any session information. Just be careful with it, all right? I think you guys know what I'm saying. So let's move on. Let me delete all of this, get it out of the way. So we need to create a profile route. So let's go ahead and do that now. So app.route profile def profile, and for now we'll just return a render template of public profile.html, and we'll just come and double check public. Yes, we have our profile.html. And if you need another look at profile, that's what we've got. And this will make a little more sense when we start passing some data to it. So what do we want to do? So we want to redirect our user here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that line. So assuming that the username exists and the passwords match, we're going to go ahead and redirect them for the URL of profile. And URL for is going to takes a function name here. So we've got this function called profile, and then it's going to build a URL for this route. So we're redirecting them here. So what do we want to happen as soon as this route gets activated? Well, we want to get their username from the session. We want to look them up in the database. We want to create a user object, which we can then pass into the profile and then render out some information about that user. So what I'm going to do is if not, actually, I think I'm going to word this differently. So how do we access the session? So just like a dictionary, it is, we can use .get or we can use the square brackets, and the session dictionary is available globally. So all of our routes, as long as we've imported session, have access to the session object. And even in our Ginger templates, we can access the session object if we like. So what I'm going to do is the following. So if not session.get username is none, and what I'm going to do is pass none to .get. So in fact, I'll reword this to make it even nicer. So there we go. So let's just take a quick look at what we're doing on this first line. So session.get allows us to get a value from a dictionary using a key. So in this case, we're using the username key. And .get, if you didn't know, you can also pass it another argument. And this argument here is what this value will become if this key doesn't exist. So in our case, we're just passing in none, because if the username key is not in the session, we want that to be none, and then we're going to do something if it's not none. So if session.getUsername is not none, because if it is none, then this is this control statement here isn't gonna work. So if it's not none, what we're going to do? So we want to create our user and get their information out of our database. So let's do this a bit more verbose, but username is going to equal to session.getUsername. And we know that the username key is in the session, so we've got no worries here about assigning this username value. And now what we'll do is we'll create our user. So what we'll do is user equals users, and we're going to assign their value by plucking their key out of our database here. And we know that we're going to get that with the username, so we do it like so. So we're passing in the username variable, which we pulled from the session, which is going to create a new dictionary here, because essentially all we're doing is just pulling out this information here. So if the username is Julian, it'll assign the user variable to a dictionary containing this information. If it's Clarissa, it will assign these values here. So we've got our user, so let's go ahead and I'll indent that over. So we will return the render template for the profile, and I'm going to go ahead and pass in user equals user, just like so. So let's add some extra control. So what happens if the username is none? So if there is no username key in the session. So let's throw in an else, and just to illustrate it, we'll do a print username not found in session. And what we'll do is return a redirect and a URL for, let's go and throw in sign in, because that was the name of our function here. So if we find the username key in the session, let's assign the username value to the username, what's stored in the session. Then we'll create our user object by pulling them out of our dictionary, and then we'll go ahead and render the profile and pass in the user. Otherwise, we're going to print that we haven't found a user in session, and we're going to redirect for the sign-in page. So let's go ahead and see this in action. If you do have anything stored in the session, you can just go ahead and delete from here. Go ahead and, oh, have I missed something? No. Okay, there we go. So let's jump back into our Flask terminal here. So let's go ahead and sign in. There we go. So that's worked. It's loaded, it's found my username in session. It's gone ahead and built my user object, and then it's passed in that information into our profile. And if we take a look in profile, what we're doing is just using the Ginger double curly brace syntax to access the values in that dictionary. So we've got the user's username, we've got the user's email, and we've got the user's bio. So what else should we add? Well, we should give an option to allow our user to sign out and clear the session cookie. So let's go ahead and do that now. And this is a nice simple route. So app route, sign out, sign out. And what I want to do is return a redirect with a URL for sign in. Okay, so what do we want to happen when somebody clicks on a link, not sing out, goodness gracious me, sign out, thank you very much. Right, so when someone visits the link sign out, what do we want to happen? Well, we want to clear this username key from the session. So we do that with session.pop. Oh, and because it's a dictionary, we can use pop, and then we'll provide it a key, username, and that would work as is. But what happens if somebody isn't, if someone hasn't signed in and there is no username key in the session? Well, this is going to error out, and we can go ahead and demonstrate that now by, let's go ahead and delete our session, refresh, and you can see because the session doesn't exist, if you try and go to profile, it's just going to redirect us to the sign in page. So let's sign in again. So we're signed in, let's go to sign out. Okay, that works. Let's pop the username from the session, and if we just go ahead and refresh that, you can see that's gone. But what happens now if we try and access the sign out route with the username key not in the session? You can see here we get this error, and it's a key error for username, and that's because the key username doesn't exist in the session. So to mitigate that, just like we did with session.get, we do the same with session.pop, and we'll pass that none. So what that's going to do is, if we refresh that now, no errors, and it's just redirecting for sign in. So that's worked just as we wanted it to. So let's go ahead and, just to illustrate the session, let's print the session just after we successfully sign in. So here we go, and if we look over here in the terminal, we get this secure cookie session, which is just a special type of dictionary created by Flask and Flask's underlying technologies. And there we can see we get the key and the value. So that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted to cover in session. Important things to note, like I said, don't store anything sensitive in session, even though it's very, very tempting. Store it somewhere else. Store it in a Redis database, store it in a regular database, and we're going to be covering databases very, very soon. So hang tight for that. Feel free to hit the subscribe button, because I will be covering many databases soon. We're going to work with MongoDB, we're going to work with Postgres, with MySQL, so all sorts of databases, and a couple of new databases as well. So exciting stuff coming soon. I'm just reading through my notes here because I don't want to miss anything out. I think that was everything I wanted to cover for sessions. So if you've got any questions, comments, leave them in the comment section below. I will, as always, throw a link to the text-based version of this, which does cover the session in a bit more detail. So feel free to head over to the website and give that a read. If you're enjoying this kind of content, click the like button and subscribe, and I really appreciate your support. You know, I'm getting some good comments and feedback, so I do really appreciate that, and I hope you're enjoying it. I'd love to get some feedback from you guys, so feel free to drop them in the comment section below. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.